Okay, so this is just a continuation of what we did last week. We're just going to be solving right triangles. If I ask you to solve for a right triangle, you have to find all of its sides and all of its angles. Anything that's missing. Normally I give you at least 2 out of the 6 things. And you got to solve for the other. Well, we always have a right angle. And I'll always give you 2 things. So you have to solve for the other 3. So last week we worked on just solving for the sides. When you use SOHCAHTOA, you solve for the sides because it's like x over something or something over x. Today we're going to add in angles. When you want to solve angles, you have to use inverse trig ratios. So those are used to solve for angle measures. So there's inverse tan, inverse sine, inverse cosine. But it's written with this little like -1. So inverse tan will give me the measure of angle A, inverse sine. On your calculator, do you see the sine, cosine, tan buttons you've been using? Above them there's sine to the -1, cosine to the -1. In a graphing calculator, you just hit the second and then the sine button. And you just, this will pop up. Same with scientific, I think you hit second or shift and then the sine button. So we're going to be using inverse trig functions to find angles. And then everything else is the same. So on the next page, let's just go through. If I want to find the inverse, how do I do that in the calculator? If I give you a ratio, can you find the angle measure? So for example 1, use your calculator to approximate the measure of angle A to the nearest hundredth of a degree. So our answers here are still going to be decimals. We still just round to 2 decimal places. So if it says sine A equals 0.76, I'm trying to find the measure of angle A. Do inverse sine like I have. Put in 0.76. It's weird because it says sine A, but sine and inverse sine cancel each other out. So in your calculator, you're going to do inverse sine 0.76. And how big is this angle measure? 49.46 degrees. If you get like a negative or a number bigger than 90, you did something wrong. You're probably not in degree mode. So if it says cosine B is 0.17 in my calculator to find the angle measure, I'm going to do inverse cosine. So hit second cosine. So this is 80.21 degrees. And then for C, for tan, I can do inverse tan. Oops, don't do it twice. And you get 38.66. Okay, still always round to the nearest hundredth, 2 decimal places. So now we can solve for the whole triangle. These 2 questions look very similar to the 2 solving triangles on your quiz on Thursday. They're each worth 5 points. Okay, this is what we're going to be focused on the next few days. So if I want to solve for triangle A, see how it just says solve? I got to find 3 things. Remember, right up at the top. I have to find how big AC is, because that's the missing side that I don't know. I have to figure out how big the measure of angle A is, and how big the measure of angle C is. So those are my 3 answers I'm looking for. On the quiz, that'll be off to the side too, so you'll know what to solve for. So, what do you want to solve for first? You want to solve for an angle or a side? What do you think? Angle? Now here, it doesn't matter. We can solve, Aaron, we can solve for A or C. Do you care? I'm going to stick with angle A, only because it's in that bottom corner. If you're looking at angle A, let's label our triangle. Which side is the opposite from angle A? Let's remember from last week. 16 is the opposite. What's 20? The adjacent. So if I'm thinking SOHCAHTOA, if I'm trying to find angle A, which one am I going to use? Because this is the hypotenuse. Think SOHCAHTOA. Do you see how I have O and A? That means the tan of angle A would be 16 over 20. You guys have been used to me giving you an angle measure here. Now it doesn't matter. If I picked angle C, it would just be tan of C is 20 over 16. So to solve for that angle, I'm going to use the inverse tan. So I'm going to say the inverse tan of 16 over 20. That'll give me the measure of angle A. Okay, it's kind of like the tan and the inverse tan cancel each other out. So in my calculator, I'm going to do inverse tan 16 over 20. So 38.66. So the measure of angle A is 38.66 degrees. How many degrees are there in a triangle? 180. So if I already figured out angle A, can I just use that knowledge to find angle C without doing one of these guys again? So I'm going to say 180 minus 90 minus 38.66 gives me the other angle, 51.34. When I grade your quizzes, if this number is screwed up, let's say you use sine instead of cosine, or instead of tan, but as long as these two add up to 90, I give you credit for the other one. Usually I make one angle worth 2 points and the other angle only worth 1. Okay. Now we got to find AC. Here's the thing. I could use a trig ratio like we did last week, or if I have two sides and I'm trying to find the third, what do we do from the first quiz that we could use? Starts with a P. I could use Pythagorean theorem to find the hypotenuse. So I could just set this up, 16 squared plus 20 squared equals x squared. So you can use stuff from before. If you get two sides, you can use Pythagorean theorem to find the third. What's 16 squared? 256. 20 squared. 400. $656. I'm okay at this point if you give me a decimal answer. You do not have to rationalize. So the square root of 656 is 25.61. So that's how big AC is. Okay, so if you see a triangle like this where you have two sides, now I don't care the order you do it in. If you want to do Pythagorean theorem first, that's fine. Then you have all three options. You could use sine, cosine, or tan. Once you have all three sides, just pick two out of the three. This is 5 points on your quiz on Thursday. 2 points for Pythagorean theorem, 2 points for this, 1 point for that third angle. If I don't give you a triangle like this, the other kind looks like B, where I give you a side and an angle. So I either give you two sides or a side and an angle. I can never just give you all three angles, unless it's a special triangle. So here, I have to solve. I have to find three things. I got to find the measure of angle B, because that's the one angle I'm missing. I have to find side length BC and side length AC. So there's the three things I'm missing. So, what do you want to find first? The angle is the easiest to find here. Because how many degrees are there in a triangle again? 180. I already have two of the angles. So to find the angle measure, I can just do 180 minus 90 minus 23. So angle B is 67 degrees. On the quiz, that one's just worth 1 point. Because you can easily find it by subtracting. Yes, Aaron? I did 180 minus the 90 degree angle I already have minus the 23 degree angle. Because all three angles always have to add to 180. Okay. So I'm going to label BC X and AC Y. Now here's the thing. I'm going to label this as if 23 was the only angle I was given. You can basically just use two trig ratios, or you can use one in Pythagorean theorem. It's up to you. Let's find BC first. So let's label. 23 is my angle. X is what side? Opposite. What about Y? 40 is the hypotenuse. So if I want to find X, I'm going to use O and H. Which function's O and H? Sine. So this is just what we did last week. I'm going to say the sine of 23 is X over 40. Put this over 1, cross multiply. So X equals 40 times the sine of 23. A lot of you on the worksheet on Friday or Thursday were always dividing because the two things I showed you how to do was division. Or people always thought, well, the number always goes on top. No. Remember, with so, it's O over H. With ka, it's A over H. With toa, it's O over A. So you're either going to multiply or divide. So this is just 40 times the sine of 23, which is 16.63, or 15.63. So that's BC. You have two options for AC. I can use Pythagorean theorem to find the other leg, or I can do another trig function. I'm going to do another trig function just so you can see it, because I know it's been a minute since we've done these. It's been 3 days. So for AC, plus, when you do another trig function, you're not using any of your answers. So if you get this one wrong, you won't get the next one wrong. So for AC, which I got to use A and H, which trig ratio am I going to use? Cosine. So the cosine of 23 is Y over 40, adjacent over hypotenuse. Plus, with this one, they're both multiplied, so it's pretty easy. Cross multiply, I get Y is 40 times the cosine of 23. And you end up with 36.82. Okay, 5 points on Thursday. 2 points for each one of these. 1 point for that angle. Now, I didn't use the 67 at all. You can use the 67, but these would just be flip-flopped. Because from 67, this would be the opposite. This would be the adjacent. But I like to use the numbers I'm given in the problem. Questions? These are the hardest things to do. because it's kind of combining everything you've learned so far. Okay, the next three would just be story problems. I just want you to see some story problems finding an angle. The whole back of your quiz on Thursday is all story problems. I think there's 5 of them. Either solving for a side or solving for an angle. So here we have a track for a model train. You want the track to incline from the first level to the second level, which is 4 inches higher and 96 inches long. Is the angle of elevation less than 3 degrees? So this is our angle we're trying to find, x degrees. So let's label our triangle. What's 4? What side? 4 is the opposite, right? Because it's directly across. Is 96 the adjacent or the hypotenuse? Adjacent. So this is the hypotenuse, which we are not using. So if I was thinking of writing this out, the trig ratio, it would be like tan of x equals 4 over 96. Okay, think about when you're doing inverse tan, you know how like if you have like 2x equals something, you divide and those cancel out? Think of like inverse tanning. If you inverse tan both sides, those kind of cancel out. The inverse tan of a tan is just a number. So that's kind of how it works. So my x is inverse tan of 4 divided by 96. So that's what I plug in the calculator. So you don't always have to write this thing first. You can just write it like this if you want. Just know you use inverse for angles. Make sure you close your parentheses. So 2.39 degrees. So is that less than 3 degrees? Yes, less than 3 degrees. Okay, questions? So example 4 is a driveway. It is 25 meters long and it's built on an incline. It has risen a distance of 4 meters by the time it reaches one end to the other. What is the angle of elevation? Where do you think I'm going to put the 4 meters if it's risen up 4 meters? Is it going to be here or here? The 4 meters probably goes here. We're trying to find the angle of elevation, this angle here. So label your sides. Figure out if you're going to use sine, cosine, or tan. 4 is which side? Opposite. What's 25? I have O and H. Am I going to use sine, cosine, or tan? I got to use sine. But if you don't want to write it out, I'll write it out. You would say sine x equals 4 over 25. That's opposite over hypotenuse. Or you can write it as inverse sine 4/25. It's going to be here. That's what x equals. So you're always doing one trig function. And the nice thing is you don't have to worry about multiplying or dividing. It's just put the fraction in. So x is 9.21 degrees. So on the quiz, they're all going to be mixed together. Look for what is the angle measure. If I'm asking for an angle measure, that's when you do the inverse. Okay. Last one. Each step of a stairway rises 18 centimeters for a tread width of 32 centimeters. Which angle, this is the Greek letter theta. It's actually used a lot when you get on to like algebra 2 and pre-calc. is basically, instead of using x for an angle measure, they use this symbol. We don't use it very much in this class, but you'll see it a lot next year. What angle does the stairway make with the floor? So the hard part here is we're trying to find this angle, but it's kind of like the opposite of where the stairwell is. So think about like making yourself a triangle almost like this instead. And that's our right angle. So each step of the stairway goes up 18 centimeters. So the 18 centimeters goes here. And that's how much it's rising up. And the width is 32, so that's here. I wish I could zoom in more, but yeah. So which two sides do I have? Think about how you would label this. 32 is what side with the angle? Adjacent. What about 18? The angle's like right here. Opposite. Sine, cosine, or tan? Tan. But I'm finding an angle, so I'm going to use inverse tan. O over A. 18 over 32. So 29.36 degrees.